All right, good evening, everybody. Again, thank you for joining us for the East Troublesome and Williams Fork Fire Evening Update. The format of the meeting will be the same as it was last night, and previous to that, we'll have a little bit of time from our incident commander who will provide a fire update, and then the Grand County Sheriff will also be here to provide some updates regarding evacuation levels. Why don't we move forward, and of course after those presentations then we'll have time for some questions and answers. So Dan, why don't you come up?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Quinones. I'm one of the incident commander trainees with Pacific Northwest Team Number 3. Some stats for the fires that we're going to be talking about tonight, like Stan just mentioned, which are the East Troublesome and the Williams Fork Fire. The East Troublesome currently stands with the fresh information we just got from our Colorado State multi-mission aircraft, which does the infrared mapping of that forest. It's a great asset. The acres for East Troublesome is 188,079, which shows growth today of 17,493 acres, and we still remain at 5% containment on that one. For the Williams Fork Fire, we're at 14,763 acres of 66 growth, and we hold at 30% containment. So I'm going to start off with the Williams Fork Fire real quick. It's been behaving really well, and we've seen a little bit of growth up here on the northern edge, like we have seen in the last several days. The 66 acres that I just mentioned is very minimal on a fire that's 14,000 acres plus. So you're not going to really see that on the map, and if you're looking at any thermal imaging on your internet services or the systems that are out there for your view, you might pick up a few yellow dots or a few red dots, but really it's very minimal on the northern end. The southern end, we also have some values at risk down here with the dam projects and some other infrastructure. Minimal to no growth down there. Pretty much the whole fire has stayed in the footprint that it was the last several days, which is a great thing. So with that being said, we are monitoring this by air. We do have some resources, very few albeit, because we do have a resource shortage with all the other fires that we have going on across Colorado and in the western states. But we are monitoring this, keeping a close eye on this fire, and are really pleased to see that there has been minimal growth. So moving on to the East Troublesome Fire. A couple of updates for you on this one. So the growth that we had yesterday, which was substantial, we had 2 heavy fire days, which showed extensive growth, as we've been talking about, and I'm sure you folks have seen if you're anywhere in the community, the columnar development and the photo opportunities, if you will, of some pretty impressive fire behavior that we're not looking forward to seeing. And we had a real pleasurable day today in not seeing that behavior, and I'll talk about why for here in a moment. The fire did spot yesterday and start this fire over here, east of the divide. And what we have done in working with our area command teams, which is an overlay of us, they have 7 fires underneath their control. These 2 fires are 2 of them, obviously. Is we've divided along the Continental Divide, and this is going to be the Thompson Zone on the east of the Continental Divide. That fire is currently going to be managed by the Northern Rockies team that's managing the Cameron Peak Fire. So although we will give you an update on growth, the specific tactics in the future, those are going to come from the Cameron Peak folks and the incident management team that's managing that incident. More of interest to folks here on the TV, I'm sure, is going to be the west side, or the predominant area of the fire, and that's going to be called the Grand Zone. All underneath the East Troublesome Fire, but we have the Grand Zone and the Thompson Zone. So speaking specifically to this fire, starting on the western edge, you'll see these black lines like Noel mentioned yesterday. Those are containment features. Those are continually being updated, and we actually have some more containment on this side than you'll see on this map. We're trying quickly to update the map products as efficiently and as accurately as possible. That data takes a little bit of time to come in and process and get on a visible format, so we'll speak to that though. This whole western edge remains staying where it was yesterday, which is a great thing. We have not seen the winds, the low RHs, the high temperatures that were forecasted or that we did see the last 2 days, so the weather has abated. That's a great thing for us today. With that, we've had the ability to not only keep this fire where it is based off the fuels conditions and the abated weather that I just mentioned, but also we've had aviation assets, which we have had on station for several days, if not weeks prior to us coming here, but we finally had the ability to use them. The smoke has cleared out, the winds have died down. We did not have fog or visibility issues getting them off the ground initially early in the morning, so we have had continuous air support over this fire, both in the ways of rotor wing, which is helicopters, large water dropping helicopters, which you'll see or hear, called the Type 1 aircraft. We've also had fixed wing aircraft. We've had some CL-415, the water scoopers that you see up in Canada that drop water. Lake Granby is a great lake to grab that water very quickly and move that across the fire as the operations folks see the need, and very quick return times and load times. So you may not have seen the retardant planes over the fire, and the reason for that is because those water scoopers are being more efficient, they're being more effective, and with the entire aircraft fleet that we have available to us today, congested airspace is something else that we're trying to manage, and we're doing a good job with that, but it's been a great day for that. So as we move around to the south, continuing operations into Kinney Creek, Drowsy Water Creek, the fire continues to back down a little bit. We're keeping up with that, extending these dozer lines with mechanized equipment, hand lines, and doing some firing. So you might hear about indirect containment and direct containment. Direct is where you're right on the fire edge, one boot in the black, if you will. Indirect, we're pulled back a little bit. If we pull back, our desire is to get fire down to that containment feature so it doesn't have the chance to push across our line and cause problems in the future. So it's a little bit slower going to get those features put in with the heavy equipment or the hand line, back that up with fire, and lock that pace in so we can get more containment on this fire for you folks. Real good effort down here to the south, protecting Hot Sulphur Springs and Granby as the main communities here on the southern end. As we move over here just north of Granby, got Highway 125. Some really good work has been done from the Willow Creek Reservoir, again with the dozers and the heavy equipment, again bringing fire down. They're getting really close to tying in from Willow Creek Reservoir down to Highway 125 with those operations. And if they're not getting close already, the end of shift, they should be there. That is the hope. They've been working on that project for a day or so now. The winds we had yesterday caused some challenges, but again, with the abated weather, they're making really good progress. Moving on to the north, from Willow Creek up to the Table Mountain and tying back into Lake Granby, the same actions are going as well with the heavy equipment, the boots on the ground, and putting fire down on the ground to try and lock this piece in here, again, to protect the town of Granby and the community. You can see the color changes on the map. The blue and the yellow, those are going to be a lighter fuel model based off the agency's jurisdiction. The BLM is predominantly, sage and grass component, which is why we're making such good progress down here. As you turn into the greenlands, those are Forest Service, and that's where you hear about that beetle kill, heavy lodgepole pine, and dead and down. So it's going to be a little slower going through here, but again, they're highly confident they'll be able to keep moving and lock that effort in. The fire continues to move at a slow rate, albeit due to the winds being abated, like I mentioned earlier, towards Shadow Mountain Lake, Grand Lake, and Lake Granby, all the communities dotted up and down the 34 corridor. Structure resources are in there heavy, making sure that they can do all they can to protect those structures. Again, a reminder of the objectives that this team has as of yesterday and today is community protection in the large populated areas, life and safety, working with the Sheriff's Department of Grand County if there's any further evacuations to make sure that the community members are safe, and then starting to move out towards those more rural areas and isolated homes and taking care of those as we can. The community protection and the dotted homes can be interchangeable depending on how the fire moves. We're not discounting any homes in any locations. We're evaluating that constantly and going to where we can be most effective and working with those structure assets, the wildland assets, and the aircraft that overlay our atmosphere. So good progress moving through here with our structure assets. Coming around into the park, this is currently moving at a very slow rate. The neat thing that happened yesterday evening was the spot that went across here and the predominant fire front stalled on us due to the atmosphere getting moistened up, the winds dying down, and the fuel's not being readily available to burn. So it's pretty much parked. It is creeping and smoldering. Might be some single tree torching out there, but it's not doing that flaming front and making 20-mile runs like it has been the last couple of days. So it's really slowed down, which we're excited to see. Coming around the north side of the fire, intensive scouting mission to try and see what we're going to do. Again, we have limited resources focusing on the communities of Granby, Grand Lake, Hot Sulphur Springs, protecting those. But we can't lose sight of the fact that this North Fire is a large fire front in terms of distance and access. It's very limited, it takes a long time to get around there. So we are doing some scouting missions to see what that might look like, because as you folks know, we do have some snow coming this weekend, but we're not banking on that to be a season-ending event by any means. It could be a dusting of very dry snow that you guys have coming through here. What's on the backside of that? Do we have any drier weather coming? Do we have more moisture? We're not hearing about any additional moisture following up this snow flurry, whether it be 2 inches or a foot. It's going to evaporate, and we want to be prepared and be strategic in thinking ahead. And we know that we have additional communities and values at risk to the north. So we're doing some scouting missions across here to make sure that we're ahead of the plan and that we have a good plan to enact should we need to and as resources become available. A couple other items of note is that Highway 125 has been opened to firefighter traffic. So I'm giving you this information for accessibility for 5 miles, which is a good thing. We're starting to see some road access to be able to get into some areas should we need to. And then Highway 34 has access, again, only to firefighters for firefighter safety and for potential evacuations, working with the sheriff's office, whatever that asset might be, and that's up for 12 miles, which is a really great thing. We also have, that's the power being restored, so I'll take that back. Power being restored for 5 miles up Highway 125 and for 12 miles up Highway 34. Hopefully I'm clear on that, and apologies for the confusion on that one. Also, the gas companies are getting in there to do their assessment and see what that looks like for turning some utilities back on. And they'll be in close coordination with the local county officials and with the sheriff's offices, as obvious. So, main thing that I want to mention as well is Highway 140 this afternoon. Highway 40 has been opened for access, which is a great thing to get moving from east to west again. But keep in mind that we do have firefighters using this thoroughfare and these ancillary roads. So please be cautious of that and make sure to keep your speeds down and let us get in there to do what we need to do to continue the movement on this fire and the suppression efforts. So I think I'll leave it there and turn it over to the sheriff. So appreciate your time.
Good evening, everyone. Brett Trotland, Grand County Sheriff. So he covered a lot of the things that I was going to cover today, but I really want to focus on a few misconceptions that are out there. So I'm going to actually take my time today to kind of focus on that. So as we mentioned, 17,000, 18,000 acres still within this last 24-hour period. Things have slowed over the past few days, but that's still a significant amount of fire growth. One of the things that we're getting a lot right now is a lot of questions from you guys in the community up north is exactly what are we doing? Everyone feels like we're just kind of standing around waiting for things to happen. And I want to reemphasize to our community that that's not the case. So a couple days ago, before this actually front even came through there, we realized that there's about 6,500 structures in that north district of Grand County. That could be anything from primary residences to secondary residences to outbuildings, but there's about 6,500 structures in that north portion of Grand County. That's a significant amount of structures. So as we look at this, we had a significant fire event a couple nights ago, and then we had obviously a big day yesterday and a smaller day today, but still significant. There's still a lot of fire in that north part of Grand County. And I want to explain this the very best way I can, see if I can do that. It'd be easier to put it on a map and actually show you, put it on a video of me kind of going through this north area, but I really can't do that. So we have spot fires all over up in this northern part of the county, mixed in with residences, mixed in with trees, mixed in with businesses. It's everywhere. And as you drive up Highway 34 at night, you look over to the left and you see all of these different types of spot fires. You look through the subdivisions. A house that was maybe good yesterday, maybe it might not be so good today. And that's really the key that I want to really emphasize is that life safety is still occurring. There's still people in our closure areas up there. We need to make sure that those people are secure. We need to make sure that structures are being protected the very best that they can. The misconception is that fire came ripping through these neighborhoods and then it's done, and it's actually really not. So these fires start, they get larger, and then depending on the wind events, they spot a little bit farther into the distance and then start a new fire of their own. And so that's one of the things that we're dealing with up there right now. Great significant events, power companies have been up there, gas companies have been up there, different utility companies. All of these types of infrastructure things that we're working on You know, I had an email exchange with the sanitation district today. All of these key partners that we have are working their part to try to get their infrastructure back up in place, assess their infrastructure, see what needs to be done, while my teams are working with state emergency management, state division of fire prevention and control, our local resources to try to get structure protection, or excuse me, structure assessment teams in there and actually see what's happening. It's a very, very methodical process. We want to make sure that we tell you correctly the information on your house. And just as I'm coming into meetings today, I'm continuing to hear on the radio that, you know, a house that was good maybe isn't so good now. So we really want to try to emphasize that the risk is still very, very dangerous in there. I spoke to Chief White, our local fire chief, who's been up in the field today, and he reiterated that point, is that this is not done. There's still things that need to be done up there to make sure that we secure that before we can get people back into this community. And so work with us. We're trying to get the information out there the very best we can. Please know that we're working the best to make that very best choices for you guys. But it is active fire zone. There's still hazards. Let our firefighters work. Let our public responders work. And together we'll get through this. Thank you.
Sheriff, why don't you stay up there for a couple of questions for you while you're there. One question is, how do we deal with the sub-zero temperatures? I think you may have addressed that a little bit, and water lines while evacuated.
October in Grand County, we absolutely know the nights are getting cold. It was 18 degrees this morning. We still have that significant fire out there. This poses a problem. We've talked about this a lot throughout the day. You know, how do you get people back in there to get these houses turned back on? We're making some progress, you know, working with the power company, working with the gas companies, trying to figure out how to get these utilities back into place as quick as we can, knowing that we're coming up on colder days. Hopefully those colder days are going to help us with the fire, but we're recognizing that as we move forward. We spoke to the state about that today, and we understand that's a priority.
And when doing your structure assessments, do they consider the value of the property over others?
So I understand that part of the process very basically, so I'll do kind of my global view of that, and then I'm sure someone else can provide information at a later time. But basically, at the county level, what our responsibility is we go out there to actually determine, is the structure a loss, is the structure a partial loss, is the structure fully intact, and then we notate that through our documentation process. And then what happens after that is our local or state partners come in, and they also have a process that they do. And that process gets reported up to the federal government, FEMA, things like that. And then that's all assessed through them. So there's kind of a couple different tier process. We spoke with the state today, and we have some state partners coming up here in the next couple days that will begin even more of a detailed structure assessment process. And so the county will be doing their part, the state will be working to help us on their part, and we'll kind of work on these as we move forward.
And then finally, one more for you while you're up there. You had alluded to the number of structures that have been evacuated. How many people have been evacuated?
So the amount of structures was not the actual number that was evacuated. That is the number of structures that is in that North District. And so that is on a map through our GIS system, is the actual number of structures within that Grand Lake Community, Highway 34 corridor, Highway 125 corridor. A lot of those we made face-to-face contacts with. A lot of those we did not because of the fire conditions at night.
Okay. Thank you, Sheriff. Dan, so a couple of questions for you. You pointed on the map the fire edge to Hot Sulphur Springs. How far is that?
Well, if you look at the scale of the map from this current fire edge, over here is about 2 miles. You're looking at probably roughly from Hot Sulphur Springs up to this edge, you're looking at 5-6 miles, and that's a really rough estimate using a finger there on the map. We can get you a more accurate estimate if you're looking for that afterwards through the PIO shop, and we can actually draw that on some iPads and get you a number. There is a significant distance, though, in terms of fire spread towards Hot Sulphur Springs. So I'm sure the question is really, what are the potential impacts to Hot Sulphur Springs is probably why the question's being asked. It's dropping every day with the weather that we have, the abated weather, the access to aircraft, and the continued movement of the heavy equipment that I talked about in burning operations. We're starting to feel a lot better on the southern edge about checking southward progression towards any values at risk.
Thanks. What is the, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Dan.
Sure.
What is the potential for post-fire flooding?
That's going to depend on burn severity. So if you look at this map, it looks like a continuous fire like your sheriff was just talking about. It's really not. There's areas that we call it a mosaic. Some areas may have burned extremely hot down to, we call it a stand replacement fire if you're in a timber model. If you drive through there, you'd see nothing but sticks and black dirt. Other areas, the fire might have dropped to the ground, just burned the understory, and the trees might still be living. Again, the mosaic. So it depends on the burn severity in the area. It also depends on the slope or how much slope there is, drainages and water flow. And there's also, it's going to depend on how much moisture we do get. So processes of the fire is we're here to come in and help with the suppression efforts and something that we call suppression repair, which is very minor, trying to lock that in and prevent some of those flooding effects. There are burned area emergency rehab teams that'll more than likely come in after that, and those are the folks that are really going to do the assessments on what the burned areas look like and the preventative measures for the potential flooding and impacts to the values at risk as well.
And Dan, I'm not sure we can fully answer this question since it's on the other side of the divide, but there is a question about Estes Park and has that entire town been evacuated?
What I know as of yesterday, and again, this is take it with a grain of salt, they were talking about voluntary evacuations, and then I heard language of mandatory evacuations. Current status of evacuations in Estes Park would need to get pulled up from the website for that county for accurate information, so please do that. The fire, though, like I said, has been parked or stalled right now due to that weather that came in, the elevated moisture and such. They also do have some barriers around there with some fuels treatments, and you do have some resources in there from Cameron Peak aggressively looking at opportunities to make sure that it does not impact Estes Park to the best of their ability.
The map shows the fire perimeter, and can you discuss which areas are more active versus others?
You bet. In general terms for activity, which is where our suppression actions are focused, again, keeping in mind our objectives of communities, life safety, and then the homes as they get scattered out from those populated areas. It's going to be from this boundary here as we move around up over into here. As it gets into the park, the values at risk drop off as far as human populations. So we still have a substantial area of active fire to some degree, whether it be backing, flanking, smoldering, single tree torching. Those are kind of some of the fire behavior terms that we're utilizing today. And again, on the north end, we do have some little bit of activity up here on this northwest corner, but I would call that not high activity like we've seen by any means. And again, there's a fair amount of distance between that fire edge and any value at risk.
All right, and what role is the National Guard playing?
National Guard is, we did order some security personnel to help us with the road blockades, ensuring firefighter and public safety. We did have some conversations about aircraft. The one thing that we have is we can get more aircraft in, but the last several days we haven't even been able to use the aircraft that we have, which is a substantial air fleet, which is what we're using heavily today. Nothing is going to be left on the deck, if you will, at the airport. It's all rotationally flying. Also, we're managing that storm prediction of the snow coming in. And one thing that we don't want to do is trap any aircraft, National Guard or otherwise, into a snowy environment and make them unavailable for other fires at other communities to be protected elsewhere. So we're really weighing, do we need to get more aircraft in here? You bet we do, but do we need to get them in here right now, or can we utilize what we have very effectively, make some keen progress in some very strategic areas, and then after the snow comes through, look at our air fleet and really evaluate and see where we're at after that storm comes through.
What is the risk to the communities to the north? Rand and Gould, I believe is the pronunciation.
Yes. So I believe those are in Jackson County. In Jackson County, the fire up here to the north, I can't point specifically on the map. Apologies for that being on day 2 here. But I do know that it has crossed into Jackson County very minimally, quarter mile at most coming down that backside, and the behavior is very minimal as well. So the impacts to those communities right now, those are a ways off with the weather that we have today and the weather that's forecasted through the next several days. But as I mentioned earlier, Our folks are out there looking, gathering information, building a plan to make sure that those communities are in our thought process and are protected as we move forward.
Is the fire cause known yet?
I defer to the sheriff on that one. Still under investigation, is
Okay.
what I'm hearing, so yes.
All right. And this might be a question for the both of you, for the sheriff and for you, Dan. Has an emergency declaration occurred, and how do evacuees obtain financial assistance?
I'll defer to the sheriff on that one.
Okay, thank you.
I'm back. So the county has declared a disaster declaration, and they're in the process of working with our state and local partners on how that's actually going to play out. We had a discussion today about a disaster assistance center, trying to establish that somewhere once we can figure out exactly kind of where this fire is heading and some safety zones to establish that. So basically a disaster assistance center is where the community can come forward to gain information from the health department, the state, emergency management, Mountain Parks Electric, our partners that help us with all the different utilities and the different infrastructure, and then also talk about the financial assistance as well. So emergency management handles that portion of it, and we're hoping to get that center up and going here as soon as we can.
Thank you, Sheriff. And Dan, one final question for you as we approach 6 o'clock here.
Yes.
What are the winds forecasted for Saturday and implications of those winds? Is it a red flag day tomorrow?
Per the IMET, or the incident meteorologist this morning, he did declare a red flag warning of today that, like we said earlier, did not come to fruition as far as the winds and associated temperatures and such. He was talking about potentially looking at a red flag warning again for tomorrow, so I'll leave that up to him to speak about, but we can anticipate fire growth, although I'm assuming that's going to be abated over the next day or two. As we approach the weather event and the snow that's coming in, we will get some increased winds associated with that. So we're going to be looking at a southwest to a northwest component. None of that is good for our fire perimeters that we have, but we are keeping that in mind, and we will validate as those winds show up. Again, we do have some resources in key places. This fire, the East Troublesome on our zone, a reminder, we moved up to #1 in the nation. So although that's not good for the fire footprint and the communities affected, that does allow us to have some more leverage to gain additional resources and bring some stuff to bear, which is what we're doing today. And the progress that we've made on the fire today is, we're highly optimistic on what we've done. We've been reactionary over the last few days with the winds. Today was a proactive day, and we're going to continue to keep moving on that, not only through the remainder of this shift, but we also have night shift out there. So we're doing 24 hours of suppression actions on this fire, and we're going to take every advantage that we can.
All right, thank you, Dan. And thank all of you for taking time out of your day to be engaged with this briefing. Appreciate your questions. If you have more questions, continue to post them on Facebook, and we will answer them after this update. Again, if you need information, all of the information how to contact us is on the Facebook page, and just feel free to give us a call when you need some information. So again, this concludes our briefing for today, and again, appreciate your time and the questions that you asked. Thank you.